Welcome, Bucknutters, to our Spring Game Roundtable podcast. I am Dave Biddle, joined by Steve Hellwagon and Dwayne Long. We're going to go position by position. We're going to break it down. We're going to give you the story of the spring, and we're going to get a comment from Dwayne and Steve on each position. We'll start with offense, and we'll start with the quarterback position. The story of spring at the quarterback position, in my opinion, has been Cardale Jones. I was wrong about the quarterback position this spring. I thought J.T. Barrett would emerge out of spring as the backup to Braxton Miller. I thought J.T. Barrett, I thought they'd probably split reps, but I thought J.T. Barrett would emerge as the guy over Cardale Jones. It hasn't even been close. Cardale Jones has taken all of the first-team reps, so I think that's clearly been the story of the spring at that position. Steve, we'll start with you. Just anything you want to say about the quarterback position as we head into the spring game tomorrow?
Yeah, it's unfortunate Braxton Miller wasn't able to be out there this spring, with the shoulder and the way, he got banged up against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, but it has been good that Cardale Jones and J.T. Barrett have gotten a ton of reps, and Stephen Collier's kind of gotten his feet wet a little bit. They haven't pushed him into production, and they really haven't needed it. They want to get the other guys a lot of reps, and, it's kind of a preview of what the battle will look like. Really, all three of them will be in the running to be the starter in 2015. So, I think it's been, from that standpoint, very good to get Cardale's, going in that direction, that he could be the guy. J.T. Barrett, two factors with him, one coming off the knee injury, maybe a little slower. He's okay. There's nothing wrong with him physically, it seems. It's just, you got to take that into consideration, that he missed a whole year of football, and he's getting back into it. And the second thing is Cardale's had 2 extra years at the college level to develop his game, understand the system, and now, it's his turn, to have that opportunity. So between he and Barrett, great competition, and the scrimmage on Saturday, it took them both maybe a few plays to get warmed up, but once they did, they started making some plays, and Barrett threw 2 long touchdown passes to the tight end Marcus Baugh. So he's got a lot of promise there, and it showed some really nice things, I thought, in the course of that scrimmage.
Dwayne, tip of the cap to you, my friend. You called it coming into spring. You said we had a podcast coming into spring, and you said you thought that Cardale Jones would be ahead of J.T. Barrett. You were right.
You are correct, sir.
Tip of the cap to you. Talk about the quarterback position, Dwayne.
Well, I think we have to look at the experience factor. Steve touched on it with Barrett being out. He's also a year behind. So you look at Cardale Jones. He always wanted to be the Ohio State quarterback. He's been focused on that all along. He was ready to come in, even though Braxton Miller had already committed long before that to Ohio State. This is a guy who has his heart set on being the Ohio State quarterback. I think he's got tools. I think he can throw the ball. He runs better as a college player. He didn't really run the ball a lot at Glenville. He comes in here. He's learned it. He's been that focused. He really wants it. And I think he's just, the experience factor cannot be underestimated here. Technically, when you put his extra year of being in the system versus Barrett's injury, you can really say there's 2 years difference in the two. He's actually not only been learning the system, but actually executing it for 2 years. And Barrett, this is his first year. So I absolutely believe that Barrett will be the starting quarterback at Ohio State at some point in the future. Right now, I think the job is Jones's. I think he's going to hold on to it. I'm really not surprised that he's done this well.
Let's move on to the running back position. Story of spring, in my opinion, has been Curtis Samuel. I think a lot of people thought maybe he can fill the hybrid role, maybe he can play like Dontre Wilson did last year. He's not going to be ready to play tailback. He's ready to play tailback. He took a lot of first-team reps during the scrimmage last Saturday. In fact, it was Ezekiel Elliott was in their first, and then they'd rotate Curtis Samuel in their second, then Briante Dunn in their third. Those are the 3 guys getting the first-team reps. Warren Ball's just running with the second team. Rod Smith wasn't even out there due to academics. So Curtis Samuel's been the story of spring. He's played well. He's proven, is running between the tackles going to be his forte? No, but he can do it. He's electric. Now, Ezekiel Elliott's going to be the starter, and I think Ezekiel's had a very good spring as well, so he's been a good storyline this spring. Briante Dunn has had a good spring. He's worked himself back in the mix. So all 3 of those guys have been good storylines, but I think Curtis Samuel's probably been the biggest of the 3 just because I don't think he was expected to do this well. Steve, we'll go to you first again. Anything you want to say about the running back position?
Yeah, I like Elliott a lot. I think he's going to be an every down type guy. I think that he's got the ability. Looks like he's put on a few pounds. He's running with power. I think fans will be pleasantly surprised when they see him if he gets 8 or 10 carries in the game. Wouldn't surprise me to end up with 50 or 60 yards or something along those lines in the game. Samuel is a tremendous talent. He's got breakaway speed, as we saw in the scrimmage on Saturday. They gave him a very small crease. He went right up the middle, was gone for like a 40-yard touchdown run. Dunn's a tough kid, and, he's had some up and down times at Ohio State, and I just think he's going to get an opportunity sometime in a key game to make something happen, and I think he will. And then you're just kind of left over there with Rod Smith. I mean, this guy, there's been a total disconnect with him. I mean, he's going through some tough things academically right now, trying to finish up his degree, and just facing some tough academic challenges right now. And they're letting him concentrate on that, get him back in there in the fall and see how he factors in. And Warren Ball, you just don't hear much about him at all. So that's kind of the way it shakes out. Probably a committee approach with Elliott as the lead dog, it looks like to me.
Dwayne, your thoughts on the running backs?
Well, Samuel, I remember there was a boarding house item about someone who had seen Samuel up close said, This is not a body that you have to worry about. He's going to fill out some more. He's a bigger kid than what he looks. He's well put together. And when you look at the offense, Dave, this is not Jim Tressel's power eye. This is a offense spreading the field, allows for the opportunity. We talk about Urban Meyer's power spread. It's still a spread offense. A smaller guy, a guy who is not 225 pounds, can run in this offense quite effectively. You don't need a power back with speed. You need a speed back who's got enough power to break tackles and get through the line of scrimmage. So it's not that surprising. We saw Samuel as a running back in high school. Tremendous talent. And when you think about guys that fast, popping up the middle, getting in the middle of the field like that, you're not going to catch them. There's no angles. You're just not going to catch them. So the big play potential for a guy like Elliott, Easy is what I've always called him. The big play potential for a guy like that and for Samuel is going to be there. They're guys who are first. They're speed guys. They're quick. They're in and out of the hole, and they're strong enough that you're not going to drag them down with an arm tackle. So they can be very dangerous guys. I'm glad to see Dunn finally doing well. But I'm not going to be surprised if we see the 1-2 tandem of Eazy-E and Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, it's exciting thinking about Elliott and Samuel, and I'm glad that Dunn stepped up, and it's kind of an insurance policy. If you ask me, he can be that third guy if Elliott and Samuel get banged up, or if they need a bruiser just to give a guy a rest, whatever it might be. They have 3 guys they feel comfortable with going into the season. That's important coming off of Carlos Hyde's tremendous year last year and losing him. Okay, wide receiver position. We'll start with Dwayne on this. I'll give you the story of the spring, then we'll go to Dwayne. Story of spring at the wide receiver position has been Dontre Wilson. He feels like a wide receiver. Now they're going to give him the ball a lot. That was clear at the scrimmage. That's been clear talking to the coaches and talking to Dontre himself. He's been the story of spring, taking over for Philly Brown at that hybrid role, which they really consider a wide receiver. He's in the wide receiver room. He takes individual drills with the wide receivers. I also think Corey Smith and Mike Thomas have helped themselves this spring. We'll see how much. I think those guys have helped themselves, probably Corey Smith more so than Mike Thomas. But, Dwayne, we'll go to you. We'll go to you first on this one. Your thoughts on the wideouts?
Well, I think it's 2 different stories, Dave. I look at it's an abundance of talent. It's finding enough footballs for the talented flanker, the slot, what I call the wing back. I don't know why they're calling it the hybrid, but that's what the position
You're going old school on me. I like it.
That's what those positions are, and it's trying to find enough footballs to keep the talent happy. Wilson, adding the weight was huge. He was a guy that a good wind would knock him down. Now, whether the wind was going to catch him or not, that was the thing. Now he's added some weight, and that we've always talked about it as the Percy Harvin role. Well, what was different about Percy Harvin was he was such a well put together kid, and that's why we projected Samuel there. Well, Wilson looks like he's trying to fill out into that kind of guy who can be, he can take it up inside when he cuts back sometime. You can give it to him on the jet sweep, and he can see the hole up inside and cut it up in there. On the other hand, you look at split end, and it's just trying to find somebody who can fit the role. This is something I have hammered on since the end of the season. Is we had 9 catches from Devin Smith in the last 6 games. We had 7 more from his backup, Evan Spencer. 16 catches from our split ends in our last 6 games. That is so unbelievably unacceptable. You got to find a guy. You hear about Michael Thomas, you hear about Corey Smith, but it doesn't seem like there's any great excitement. They're just the guys who are possibly going to challenge for that position. Finding a guy who can step into that role, who can beat defenders down the field, go over the top and take the ball away, and force safeties to play back. That's going to be huge in the evolution of this spread. We need to find a guy for that position. That's the one, I would say, disappointment coming out of spring on the offensive side of the ball for me. We still haven't found a split end.
And, Steve, the floor is yours. What are your thoughts on the wide receivers?
Yeah, I got 2 stories kind of like Dwayne. First is Dontre Wilson. I mean, he's going to play. We know that. Hybrid, wingback, whatever you call it, guy that sells the popcorn and the programs and whatever. They're going to get the ball in his hands, and it's going to be on out of the backfield. They're going to toss it to him on the reverse. They're going to throw screens to him. They're going to throw slants to him. They're going to throw bombs to him. He's going to get every possible way you can get the ball to a skill position player. You're going to see it in Dontre Wilson's hands. So that's a good part of it. And I agree wholeheartedly with you guys on the second part of it is, okay, who else is going to step up? Because last year, like Dwayne said, the passing game went completely into the crapper by the end of the season. I bristle at the notion when I hear coaches or I hear, analysts who follow this or say, oh, they had a good receiving core. It used to be it went from being the worst part of the team to being one of the better parts of the team to the end of the year being one of the worst parts of the team again. They weren't making any plays. And that, to me, they weren't getting any separation. I mean, look at the DBs they're going against, at the Nard from Michigan State, those guys at Clemson. They couldn't make plays against top DBs. You can't win national championships. You can't win Big Ten championships if you don't have impact wide receivers. I don't want to say you got to have a Sammy Watkins or anything like that, but you got to have somebody who can make plays and make catches. And I harken back to that Michigan State game, and they just never got anything done to me throwing the football. And not only that, Hireman and Vanette are 2 of the top, a top tight end tandem in the country. Myers talking about playing them together. That squeezes out, another wide receiver as far as I'm concerned. So I think tomorrow the big thing is who steps up in addition to Wilson and makes plays. I want to see somebody step up because we really haven't seen it so far. Not even Devin Smith, really. I think his game took a back seat there at the end of the year, kind of as Dwayne was saying, too. Need to see more out of those guys.
Let's talk about the tight end position. This is an easy one. Story of the spring has been Marcus Baugh. There was talk that he might be on his way back to Los Angeles. Couldn't stay out of the bars and got in trouble a couple different times, including the first time when he got a get-out-of-jail-free card and went back out again even after the cop caught him the first time, took him back to his dorm for showing a fake ID, and then he snuck back out and got caught again. And then there was another incident toward the end of the year. But, you fast forward to spring, and Marcus Baugh has had a tremendous spring. At the open practice on Saturday, he had a couple long touchdown passes or touchdown receptions within about a 5-minute span. And he looks good doing it. He's very athletic. He's not the tallest tight end, but he's not small. He's got very long arms. For a 6'4" kid, he's got very long arms. He's got the speed. So there's a lot of excitement there when you think about Marcus Baugh. Only a redshirt freshman. I think a lot of people were surprised that he redshirted last year. If there wasn't the off-field incident, he probably wouldn't have redshirted last year. Hireman's missed the spring. They love Hireman as a starter going into the season. Nick Van Nett is a solid backup, but they don't have many numbers there at the tight end position. They needed Marcus Baugh to step up, and he has. Dwayne, your thoughts there in the tight end position?
Well, I'm not surprised to hear this about Ball. I was reviewing his high school film just recently, and the athleticism. This guy, he could be an impact player as a defensive end. If you look at his film, you say, well, I wonder why anybody wasn't looking at this guy as a defensive end, and then they get to the offensive part, and you say, oh, now I see why. Absolutely, he's just like a big wide receiver. He's so athletic, and that he's finally focused. He's grown up. He's had to go through some hard times, as sometimes guys do. But you look at this core of receivers and you say, Steve was mentioning earlier about them going with 2 tight ends. Why not? Right now, the split ends are not helping this football program. Why not put a couple of guys on the field, especially when you have an H-back, a true H-back in Marcus Ball who can do a lot of the things that a split end can do. I absolutely love it. And then you've got Hewerman. I've always called the kid Hewerman.
Hireman. Yeah, Hireman.
Yep. You've got him, and Vanette would start most other places in the country. So, the only negative you can say about the tight ends is that there's not enough of them. They've got some real talent there. Take advantage of it. These guys just need the time on the field. The split ends, we've seen them on the field. 16 catches in the last 6 games. I'm done.
Steve, your thoughts on the tight ends?
Yeah, I would just echo what you guys have said. It's a position of strength. Hireman, his last 4 games, he had 6 catches and averaged 35 yards a catch. Get him the damn ball, as Keyshawn used to say.
Keyshawn Johnson Hireman.
Sit him down the seam, get him the ball, and get out of his way and watch him rumble because, he made some great plays and hurdled that guy at Purdue. That was pretty awesome, too. So he's got the ability. He can really make himself a lot of money if he can get up, around 30 or 40 catches, maybe even more than that this upcoming season. He can do a great job. Vanette's more of a plugger, kind of a blocker at the tight end position. And Marcus Ball, he's the future. There's no doubt about that. I'd love to see him get his feet wet this year and get 10, 15 catches and get in the end zone and realize, hey, man, you can be a big part of the future here if you quit screwing up. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot to like there.
Moving on to the offensive line. The story of spring, in my opinion, has been the battle at center between Billy Price and Jacoby Bourne. I think a lot of people just kind of penciled in Jacoby Bourne, maybe penned in Jacoby Bourne as the starter, but Billy Price has given him very good battle there, and I think they might even rotate at the beginning part of the season until somebody wins that job. But it sounds like they really like Billy Price. I think he's the future there, if not the present. If there's a second storyline, I would go with Antonio Underwood and Darryl Baldwin, a couple of veterans running with the first team. We'll see if they can hold on to their jobs this fall, but at center position, that's going to be very interesting. My prediction is Billy Price will win that job. Steve, we'll go to you first on this one. Your thoughts on the O-line?
Yeah, I think center is wide open between Price and Bourne. Price had a couple bad snaps in the scrimmage on Saturday that may have put him back a little bit. Bourne seemed to be getting most of the first-team reps, at least on Saturday, although Price also, was mixing in there as well. So that's a good battle. Elflein is set at left guard. Decker is set at left tackle. And then you go over to the other side, you're looking at Underwood and Baldwin. And, those guys have got to play. I mean, this is their time. If they can't deliver the goods now, then it's time for Jamarco Jones or Demetrius Knox or somebody else to step right in and take that job in the fall. So I think you watch the scrimmage, the spring game tomorrow, just to see, how consistent this line can be. I don't know that they're all going to play together, but, again, individually, are there going to be breakdowns? You'll be watching very closely to see who gets the job done and who doesn't in the spring game tomorrow.
Dwayne, this is right in your wheelhouse. O-line, go.
I would echo something Steve just said, that it really is the overall how I look at the spring on the offensive line. The jury's still out. You've got Decker looking like the next great offensive lineman to come out of Ohio State. Elflein, I mean, how can you forget what he did in replacing Marcus Hall last year? Didn't miss a beat. You didn't even notice anything was going on there. At center, I think we're going to be solid one way or the other. Billy Price was a kid that, coming out of high school, I thought, I knew he was going to be an impact player somewhere. Absolutely, just a phenomenal offensive lineman, but maybe even a better defensive lineman. But we needed offensive linemen. Move him over. I think that having Bourne at center, it increases it expands the roster is what it does, because he can only play center, whereas Billy Price could play maybe 4 positions. So having Bourne as a center, and you like having a guy who can run up and down that line of scrimmage and replace anybody there. So I could see them saying, okay, Bourne, I think Price has to be clearly better to win the job. You give it to Bourne, you're solid at center, but Price can come in there and he can substitute anywhere up and down that line. that I think is going to play into this when they finally make the decisions. The right side, we don't know what's going to happen over there, and I wonder if anybody coming in, Jamarco Jones in particular, if he can come in and plug one of those holes. I think Baldwin is more solid than we are at right guard. I really think that Baldwin, they trusted him at left tackle when they needed to last year. Not that I think he can play left tackle. I think he'd be better at guard when I watch him play. But if he can hold down right tackle, and I have no reason to think he can't at least hold it down for a year, until we get some more guys with experience. That is the thing. We got to find the right side, Dave. If we don't find the right side, it's the offensive line has to work like a unit. It has to work as one. Let's get these guys and try to get them on the same page. Working as a single unit is so key to the offensive line. So we want to try to get this squared away as quickly as possible. Hopefully, some guys will step up and say, "Okay, I'm the guy."
All right, let's move on and talk about the defense. Starting with the defensive line. Exactly. Well, it better be the fun stuff this year. Now, the defensive line is the strength of the team. Not just the strength of the defense. I think they will be the strength of the team. Maybe not the quarterback position. If you want to throw Braxton Miller in there, he's the two-time Big Ten MVP. But as far as I'd say maybe the quarterback position is the strength of the team. But as far as a position group with more than one guy that starts, I'd say the defensive line is clearly the strength of the team. That being said, the story of the spring has been the absence of Jamal Marcus. And he wasn't at practice on Saturday. They held him out of the Student Appreciation Day because of academics. And even before that, when he was practicing, he was relegated to third-team status. Not what we expected from a guy that tore up the Orange Bowl when Noah Spence was suspended. And Noah Spence has to serve the final 2 games of his suspension to begin the season. So I thought Jamal Marcus would just step right in there and be a starter for the first 2 games. But he's got himself in some hot water academically. So that's been, unfortunately, the story of the spring at the defensive line position. Steve, we'll go to you first on this one. Your thoughts on the D-line as a whole?
I think that they're going to be something to really behold and watch this fall, particularly once Spence comes back off of his 2-game suspension. He's going to miss the opener against Navy, and then he's going to miss the Virginia Tech game in week 2. But after that, he'll be back, and he and Bosa are very good at defensive end. Adolphus Washington and Michael Bennett will handle it inside, and then you got a bunch of young guys. Well, other than Steve Miller at defensive end, the rest of them are all freshmen and sophomores who will be coming in, a Sprinkle, a Hill, Chris Carter may be a little bit older, I guess, but you're going to have a bunch of guys who are going to be there. Tywan Lewis as well. I really like what I see out of the defensive line, really set the tone. Mike Bennett could be an All-American type candidate at nose tackle or defensive tackle. He's really made some nice plays in the scrimmage on Saturday, and we all know what Bosa can do. As he and Larry Johnson said, the key is to not rest on your laurels from your freshman year, not to have that sophomore slump, but to come back strong. And these guys have to really set the stage, I think, for the defense with their play up front on the defensive line.
Dwayne, the floor is yours. Your thoughts on the D-line?
I was just thinking about this yesterday. I have been around since the 68-69 championship team. That was the first team I really watched, really understood the game, and I was 8 and 9 years old right through there, and sitting and watching an entire game was the first year I really ever did it. I don't remember defensive line talent this deep. It's, you got a guy like Jamal Marcus out, and Dave, we're in a situation where it's kind of like Jamal who. There's so much talent over there. Tywan Lewis has been one of the breakout guys. He's going to step right in there. He's going to have an opportunity to show with Spence out, with we don't know what Marcus's situation is going to be. He's certainly going to have some rust going into fall camp. He could have a breakout year. Those first 2 games could be huge for him. So, and Steve Miller would start in a lot of places. It's just an embarrassment of riches along the defensive line that, what is any school going to do about Michael Bennett and Adolphus Washington lined up side by side? What do you do? Pick your poison there. This could be the most dominant defensive line we've seen in memory. It's just exciting. And to think about the age. How many of these guys are going to be around? If Spence has the year we think he's going to have, he could leave here early. But it's a defensive line that's going to remain intact probably for the next couple of years. Just real serious talent. It's a very exciting thing. We need some help at linebacker and in the defensive backfield. But what this defensive line can do. Championships are built around quarterback and defensive line at the college level, and Ohio State's going to have those two elements. So, I'm not saying we're going to win a national championship. I'm saying the base is there for a team that can challenge.
I'm excited just talking about this. I've said time and time again, this defensive line has to be excellent in order for Ohio State's defense to be good. The defensive line can't just be good. They have to be phenomenal. And then I think if they can be phenomenal, then the defense in general can be good. And good would be light years better than what we saw last year. So let's talk about the linebackers. Dwayne, you touched on those guys briefly. The story of spring, I'm going to go with the tie. Raekwon McMillan and Darren Lee have been the stories of spring. Raekwon McMillan, they're really making him earn his keep. Still running with the third-team defense at last check. That's not going to last in the fall. He's going to be at least second team, and I think he's going to beat out Curtis Grant by the time Big Ten season starts. I don't think McMillan will necessarily be the starter to begin the season, but I do think eventually he will be. He's been very impressive. Saturday was my first time getting a chance to see him go live, and it was extremely impressive to watch him fly around out there. And speaking of flying around, Darren Lee, he plays with attitude. He plays with a lot of speed. He's going to be a fan favorite, and he's running with the first team. Him being a second-year guy, even though he's still a redshirt freshman, but being a second-year guy, they're having him run with the first team, and it's been a lot of fun to watch him. And his backup, Chris Worley's looking good too. Dwayne, we'll start with you on this one. Your thoughts on the linebackers?
Well, I think we have reason to be optimistic for the first time. Last year at this time, we were trying to come up with some names who was going to step in there and help this team. And that was with Shazier on the team. This year, everything looks so much better. We got some good recruiting classes in here. A guy like Darren Lee grew into a linebacker. So did Chris Worley, and they look really good. I mean, we forgot about an elite guy from a previous class in Trey Johnson, who played as a freshman. You're not hearing his name because of Lee, because of Worley. McMillan is going to be the starter at some point. I'm very worried about Curtis Grant's health. I just refuse to believe that the number of concussions this guy's had, he's going to be able to sustain it and stay. I just hope he can be in there and enjoy his senior year. You've got the one veteran and Perry on the other side. You got some more help coming in the fall. So I think there's reason to be at least quietly optimistic about what we're seeing at linebacker. Even losing Mike Mitchell, we haven't really missed a beat here. So I think there's a lot to be excited about here.
And Steve, your thoughts on the backers?
Yeah, you got the two Central Ohio guys, Darren Lee from New Albany and Josh Perry from Olentangy. I really like what I've seen out of those two guys. Their time has come at outside linebacker. And I look at middle linebacker, it's going to be a positive one way or another. Either Curtis Grant plays like he, was supposed to play coming out of high school, or he gets passed up, and Raekwon McMillan, we know he's going to play well. So, I look at it one way or the other. It's going to work out. The linebacker play, other than Ryan Shazier, hasn't been much to write home about the last couple of years, but I think that is slowly starting to change. They're getting better players in there, with McMillan in particular, and then you're going to add in some guys in the fall as well when they get in there, Dante Booker, et cetera. So, I think it's going to be a position of strength. It just may be, perhaps a better position to watch in the second half of the season than maybe it will be at the beginning. Through the Big Ten season, I think they really come on and will play pretty well.
All right, let's talk some defensive backs. I'll just mesh the corners and safeties into one group here. I think the story of spring has been Garyon Conley and Eli Apple, a couple of redshirt freshmen that have really stepped up. Garyon Conley's taken a lot of first-team reps. In fact, when they go nickel, they're moving Armani Reeves to that nickel back spot, and they're bringing in Garyon Conley to run with the first-team defense, and he's played really, really well. So Garyon Conley's a little bit ahead of Eli Apple, but Eli Apple has helped himself a lot this spring. He was a star of the scrimmage last Saturday. He had some health issues he was going through. The staff has not revealed what the illness was, but they said, it's nothing serious, but he's over it now, just kind of went undetected for a while. So those two guys have really helped themselves. At safety, the big story is there's just no depth there at all. With Von Bell missing spring, you have Tyvis Powell and Cam Burrows running with the first team, and for whatever reason, they don't think Ron Tanner can play. he seems to look good to me when I see him. But so those are the storylines. Garyon Conley and Eli Apple playing very well, and then no depth at safety. Dwayne, we'll go to you first on this one. Your thoughts on the DBs?
Well, we have guys stepping up. When you look at it, I've been complaining about safety recruiting for years. Recruiting guys that played quarterback in high school, didn't even play defense. I do not understand why Jim Tressel had that thing that he was going to put those guys back there. And we were so bad at safety for so long, and it really caught up with us. You look at who's back there now, they're getting reps in practice. I think it's huge. Whether you were impressed with the last pair of safeties or not, I was absolutely not. You have to say that, that much experience is hard to overcome. Losing that much experience is hard to overcome. So getting these guys out there now and getting them, plenty of reps, that's huge for this fall. You mentioned the depth issue. I think, how close are we to looking at walk-ons at both corner and at safety? We got 4 scholarship cornerbacks. We got 5 scholarship safeties. I'm just not. We have to be worried anytime the defensive back gets up slowly. We just don't have it. But seeing these guys step up a corner, that's huge. Being able to come up, man up, because that had something to do with it. Let's be honest. They just weren't confident in the guys that were there. I think with Chris Ash is going to come up and play a little bit more, at least zone, man zone is what I call it, when you're going to be within 5 yards of the guy, whether you're in his face or not. I like where we're going with the defensive backfield, and that these guys are stepping up. As far as Conley's concerned, back when he was coming out of high school and everyone was talking about Cam Burrows, both Mark Porter and I said, look, Cam Burrows is a special athlete, but on an island, man coverage, we would pick Conley as the best cover guy in the state, and he's proven that. Just a tough-minded guy, played at a high level in high school, and now here he is standing out and look like he's going to be on the field a lot this fall. And I think Apple is going to be too. Reeves, I love him in that role, stepping in there in that nickel role. I've always thought that he would look better at safety. He was a guy that was always peeking in the backfield, got caught doing that quite a bit, got burned by it quite a bit. Hopefully he'll learn from that experience, but I would not be surprised if he helps us at safety at some point in his career. Things are looking up there. We got young guys who have been in the system now for a while, and now they're starting to show.
I'm glad you brought up Chris Ash, Dwayne, because one of the things he's really implemented in that back seven, two things really. He's had the walkout linebacker. They've gotten rid of what they call the weak side linebacker. Now it's the walkout linebacker, and that's the Darren Lee role right now, and Chris Worley. And the other thing is they're playing more bump and run, and they're playing a lot of it during the spring. They're not going to play 90% or 100% bump and run when the season begins, obviously, but they're repping. They say every snap they're playing some bump and run, some press coverage just to get their corners used to it, and I think that's exciting just to know they're going to have a lot more press coverage this year. Steve, we'll go to you. Your thoughts on the defensive backs as you analyze them this spring?
Yeah, I think getting better is probably the way I would put it. Probably not a finished product just yet, very young. Dorian Grant is the senior leader at one cornerback position. Tyvis Powell got to play a little bit of the nickelback last year. Now he's going to get a shot at safety along with Von Bell and Cam Burrows. Those seem to be the three main guys for those two spots. And then you look over at the other cornerback position, you got Reeves, Apple, and Conley. Apple had a huge day on Saturday with the 2 interceptions, got his black stripe taken off finally. So, I think you got bodies in place, 6 or 7 guys for those 4 or 5 spots, and it's just sorting through the personnel, finding the people who are the most consistent playmakers, the guys who aren't going to break down. And when the first team was out there on Saturday, Dave, I didn't see a lot of pass breakdowns with those guys. It was when you got down into the second and third units with the walk-ons, is when a couple of the bigger plays happened. So I want to see on Saturday, how does an Apple, how does a Conley match up with these wide receivers? Is Reeves any better than where he left off at the end of last season? He's got to be improved or he can't play. And then obviously over at safety, you got a guy like Burrows, who everyone thought coming out of high school he was going to be this lockdown Chris Gamble type cornerback, and lo and behold, he's outgrown the position, and now he's a hard-hitting safety apparently. So is he going to be an impact player, or is he going to be in the background for a couple of years before he makes his presence felt? So I want to see that defensive backfield get some opportunities to shine on Saturday, and I want to see him come through big.
And last thing here in our spring game roundtable podcast, let's talk some special teams. The story of the spring has been Kyle Clinton. Urban Meyer said that he does have a leg up, no pun intended, on true freshman Sean Nernberger. Kyle Clinton's a fifth-year senior. He's a local kid, thank you very much, and he went to Ohio University to start out his career under Frank Solich. So it looks like Kyle Clinton, as a fifth-year senior, a walk-on, is going to be the kicker replacing Drew Basil. The Buckeyes have a phenomenal punter, arguably the best in the country, in Cameron Johnson. To think about what he did as a true freshman last year, new to American football, it's exciting to think what he's going to be able to do coming into his second year. We'll see about the return game. I don't know how much they've solidified those roles. Obviously, Dontre Wilson is going to be in the kickoff return role and punt return role, and I think probably Curtis Samuel is going to be back there with him. But the story of the spring has been Kyle Clinton. Steve, your thoughts on special teams?
Yeah, I think with Clinton and the enrolling freshman, Sean Nernberger, they're going to have, some people to choose from there at place kicker, and I definitely want to see, if Nernberger's not going to play, would you redshirt him? Would you play Kyle Clinton? That would be maybe a favorable result, but I think that there's a long way to go in that battle. I think they'll go all the way through preseason camp before they figure that out, and Coach Meyer did say yesterday that Nernberger did hit a long field goal during the practice. I guess it was Wednesday night they had practice. So possibly, it'll be Clinton, possibly Nernberger, and of course Johnston. What a great first year he had as the punter, and I just want to see the next step for him. How much better can he be in his second year now that he fully understands what they're trying to do, and I'm excited to see, the direction it takes. The return game should be energized as well with all these great athletes, in there as well. Got Billy Brown and Jordan Hall aren't around to clog up the mix anymore. Let's break one. What do you say? So, I think it's going to be fun to watch special teams. Kerry Combs is going to bring his brand of football, energetic football to that position as well. It should be a lot of fun to watch them when they have to kick or punt the ball.
Dwayne, your thoughts on special teams?
Well, it looks like when you were really honest about it, the most gaping hole, maybe with the exception of the offensive line, was going to be kicker. Who's going to handle the kicking duties? And it looks like we've got two guys who are going to be able to step into the role. Had the punting is, this kid, his ability to drop the ball inside the 20 is uncanny. It's impressive just to watch he can consistently do that. So I wasn't worried about that, but usually your kicker leads your team in scoring. Well, we didn't have a guy. So that could be if you're really honest about it, kicking game's not fun. It's something you just, we got the points. That's it. But it could be the most important aspect of the spring is that we got a guy that we know is going to be able to put the ball through the uprights when we need him to, and we might have another one coming in. So that is just a plus coming out of spring is a kicking game. And I'm sure we're going to have some guys. We've got too many guys who can change the game with one touch, and we can't find anybody to return kicks. I just refuse to believe that.
Yeah, hopefully Dontre Wilson can, be very explosive in that role. Talking to him, he says he's going to be the primary kickoff returner, primary punt returner, everything. I don't know if the coaches would go that far yet, but hopefully he will be. He didn't return any punts last year. Billy Brown was the main punt returner, and he always made me nervous. Then he had the huge fumble in the Clemson game, which was really too bad for the Buckeyes because I think they would have won the game if not for that. Not to put that all on Philly. I feel bad that he kind of took a lot of flack for that. But he always made me nervous in that punt return role. I got to be honest. It's going to be exciting to see Dontre Wilson take over for him if it does turn out that way. But Curtis Samuel is going to be exciting back there. I think they definitely have a lot of athletes, as you said, Dwayne. Thank you to everybody out there for joining us for our Spring Game Roundtable podcast. I'd like to thank Steve Hellwagon and Dwayne Long for their insights. We just got good news from Ohio State. They have dropped tickets for the spring game down to $5. They were going to be $20 at the door tomorrow, which I found completely ridiculous. I always said it was a good time for families to that maybe couldn't afford to go to regular season games to bring their family to the Horseshoe, enjoy the spring game for $5. I always thought that was a good deal. And I couldn't believe Ohio State was really trying to gouge the fans for the spring game this year. So good news, at the 11th hour, they've decided to drop tickets down to $5. Parking will be free. So I hope to see you down there at the spring game tomorrow. If you can't make it down, the game is live on Big Ten Network this year. Kickoff is at 1:30. Last year it was tape delayed. Went back to 1980 there and had it on tape delay. But this year it's live on Big Ten Network at 1:30. So should be exciting tomorrow. Thanks again for joining us here on our Spring Game Roundtable podcast. I hope everybody has a great day and a great weekend.